To be honest, I'm going to get plenty of criticism over my lifetime, and it's something that I don't completely ignore.
A flash drive arrived at Kensington Palace that morning, left in a plain envelope on William's private desk with no return address, and its contents revealed a meticulously documented strategy Meghan had allegedly been executing for the past 18 months, one that specifically targeted William's children. William discovered the envelope when he arrived at his office at 7:53 a.m., earlier than usual but typical given his responsibilities, and noted its cream-colored, expensive paper bearing only his name in block capitals. No one had seen who delivered it, and security footage showed nothing unusual, indicating it had been deliberately placed by someone with access to palace interiors. Acting cautiously, he opened it to find a single unmarked black flash drive and a handwritten note that read, "You need to know what she's been planning for your children." After palace security cleared the device of any digital threats, William reviewed a collection of meticulously organized files, including folders labeled with dates and subjects. One folder, titled Media Strategy George 18+, contained emails outlining plans to build a future media relationship with his eldest son, positioning Meghan as a trusted alternative voice once he came of age. Other folders detailed similarly calculated outreach strategies for Charlotte and Louis, adjusted for their ages, revealing a long-term plan to cultivate influence over all three children. The most disturbing folder, labeled Implementation Timeline, showed that these plans were already in motion, including collaboration with a California-based public relations firm and monitoring services that track the children's public appearances and indirect social media exposure. As William read through the documents, he felt physically ill, realizing this was not another media dispute but a deeply invasive strategy treating his children as targets for future manipulation. Sitting back from his computer, hands shaking with controlled fury, he understood that while he had endured years of attacks on the institution and personal criticism, this crossed an unforgivable line, one that demanded immediate and decisive action. This crossed a line so far beyond previous conflicts that it entered entirely different territory. William reached for his phone and made 3 calls in rapid succession, first to Catherine, then to his private secretary, and finally to Princess Anne, asking her to make herself available within the hour. As he waited for them to arrive, he reviewed the flash drive again, this time taking detailed notes and documenting the most damaging evidence, fully aware that the decisions he was preparing to make would be irrevocable. By 9:45 a.m., when Catherine arrived looking concerned and followed 15 minutes later with her characteristic brisk efficiency, William had already made up his mind. He was ready to demonstrate exactly how a future king responds when someone threatens the people he has sworn to protect above all else. William, Catherine, and examined the contents of the flash drive together. The depth and sophistication of Meghan's alleged strategy targeting George, Charlotte, and Louis became disturbingly clear. The documents revealed a plan developed with input from child psychologists, media consultants, and specialists in what the files described as high-value relationship cultivation with restricted access subjects. The language was clinical and corporate, treating William's children not as family members but as assets in a long-term strategic operation requiring patience and precision. The materials focused on George were the most extensive, reflecting his status as future king and therefore the highest value target. For every potential scenario, emotional struggle, conflict with palace expectations, or personal crisis, there were prepared response strategies designed to position Meghan, often through intermediaries, as a sympathetic ally who could offer understanding, public support, and emotional validation. Each approach was carefully crafted to build trust, gratitude, and ultimately influence, revealing a calculated effort to create emotional leverage and future access. The material suggested that Charlotte, based on her public appearances, was likely to be more family-oriented than George, less inclined to rebel openly, yet potentially vulnerable to feeling overshadowed by her older brother's status. Meghan's alleged strategy focused on exploiting this dynamic by positioning herself as someone who understood the unique challenge of being important but not central. Several documents outlined plans for Meghan to present herself as a mentor figure, drawing parallels to her own family experiences and offering guidance that would feel empathetic rather than intrusive. Proposed avenues for building this relationship included charitable work or public advocacy aligned with Charlotte's interests, allowing rapport to develop under the guise of support. The stated goal across multiple files was to ensure that by her teenage years, Charlotte would view Meghan as an ally and confidant. The materials concerning Louis were less detailed, acknowledging his young age, but they reflected the same underlying approach. One note suggested that, as the youngest child and furthest removed from direct succession pressures, Louis might ultimately prove the easiest point of access should efforts with George and Charlotte meet resistance. What made the situation particularly disturbing, however, was the extensive surveillance infrastructure that appeared to underpin these strategies. The flash drive contained evidence of a network of paid informants supplying regular updates on the whale's children. Some were former palace staff who had maintained connections with current employees, while others were parents at Lambrook School who cultivated friendships within the school community and reported information gathered from casual conversations. One source, identified only as Source 7, had reportedly received nearly £40,000 over 18 months to provide detailed monthly reports on the children's activities, behavior, and any remarks William or Catherine made about parenting challenges or family dynamics. The monitoring extended into the digital sphere as well. Although George, Charlotte, and Louis had no personal social media accounts, Meghan's team had systematically tracked the accounts of schoolmates and children of family friends, using advanced tools to identify posts referencing or depicting the whale's children. From these, they extracted information about friendships, interests, and activities that never appeared in official palace communications. Additional files showed that William and Catherine's parenting decisions were also being closely analyzed. Choices about schooling, independence, and media exposure were documented in search of patterns that could later become pressure points. One memo even argued that maintaining strict control over the children's public presence into adolescence could foster resentment, creating an opportunity Meghan might later exploit by offering alternative avenues for expression. Most disturbing to Catherine was a folder containing detailed psychological profiles of each child, written by someone claiming expertise in child development and family dynamics. These profiles went far beyond general observations, identifying specific insecurities, vulnerabilities, and emotional pressure points that could be leveraged to build dependence on alternative authority figures. It read less like family planning and more like an intelligence assessment. As William, Catherine, and sat in William's office with the flash drive's contents spread across multiple screens, the scale of what they were facing became undeniable. This was not a matter that could be resolved through quiet diplomacy or discreet family conversations. Confronted with profiles of his children written as though they were intelligence targets and evidence of 18 months of undetected surveillance, William knew that whatever response he chose would have to be systematic, comprehensive, and entirely uncompromising. What William did not yet know, as he absorbed the devastating contents of the flash drive, was that Catherine herself had begun noticing suspicious patterns in their children's lives weeks earlier. Catherine had been monitoring her children's behavior closely for nearly 6 weeks. Her concern began in late October when Charlotte returned from school mentioning that a classmate's mother had asked unusually detailed and persistent questions about the Wales family's Christmas plans, specifically where they would be and who would be present. A few days later, George mentioned a similar conversation with a parent at a school sports event, asking about William's schedule and how the family managed when he was away on official duties. Individually, these incidents seemed innocuous, but the repeated specificity and timing within a single week set off Catherine's instincts. The third incident escalated her concern. Catherine's personal protection officer had noticed an individual repeatedly near Adelaide Cottage over 2 weeks, ostensibly jogging or walking a dog, but whose presence felt deliberate rather than coincidental. A discreet background check revealed that the person was a private investigator specializing in discreet information services. This discovery transformed Catherine's vague unease into active alarm. She refrained from immediately alerting William, needing more than suspicions and a single potentially unrelated private investigator. Instead, she reached out to a trusted former MI5 officer who now ran a private security consulting firm serving high-net-worth clients. Catherine's instructions were straightforward: determine whether anyone was actively gathering information about her children, identify those responsible, and document everything with evidence suitable for potential action. Over 3 weeks, the investigation unearthed far more than Catherine had anticipated. The former MI5 officer, leveraging a network of contacts and specialized investigative techniques, uncovered a pattern of surveillance and information gathering that confirmed Catherine's worst fears. Drawing on contacts in both private security and law enforcement, the investigator identified at least 5 individuals actively gathering information on the Wales family, with a particular focus on the children. While the investigation was able to confirm that surveillance was taking place and trace it back to Meghan's team, it could not uncover the full scope of the strategic planning or the ultimate purpose beyond general intelligence collection. The evidence validated Catherine's fears, but still fell short of revealing the complete picture of what they were facing. What Catherine had not yet shared with William and was still struggling to process herself was a conversation she had had with the investigator 2 days earlier. That discussion revealed communications indicating that Meghan's team had attempted to recruit a current member of the Wales household, offering substantial payment in exchange for ongoing access and information. Even more disturbing was evidence that some of the intelligence being gathered went far beyond public observation. Details about the children's private routines, behavioral challenges, and relationships with one another. Information that should have been known only to immediate family and the most trusted household staff had somehow found their way into reports sent to California. Catherine also learned that she herself had been monitored, albeit as a secondary focus. Reports tracked her parenting choices, daily schedule, and private remarks at school events and charitable engagements, with anything that hinted at family dynamics or potential vulnerabilities being documented and analyzed. Keeping the investigation from William had weighed heavily on Catherine. Their marriage was built on openness and partnership, and withholding something this serious felt like a violation of that trust. She had justified it as a temporary measure, believing she was sparing him unnecessary worry until her concerns could be confirmed. Now, watching William absorb the flash drive's contents and seeing the anger and betrayal in his expression, she felt the burden of having sensed the danger weeks before he did. When William finally asked her directly whether she had known anything prior to that day, Catherine chose to tell him everything. His initial reaction was complex. There was anger that she had kept it from him, but also understanding of her motives and respect for the care she had taken to build a solid case. The realization that Catherine had been tracking this for weeks made one thing clear: there was no time to lose. 10:30 a.m. William convened an emergency meeting in a secure conference room at Kensington Palace, routinely swept for surveillance devices and reserved for matters requiring absolute confidentiality. He took his place at the head of the table as the most damning documents from the flash drive were projected onto screens around the room, marking the beginning of what would become his 3-hour war room. Catherine sat to William's right, with Princess Anne to his left. Also present were William's private secretary, the head of palace security, the Wales family's senior legal counsel, and 2 representatives from the royal household's intelligence liaison office, who coordinated with MI5 and other security services. William opened the meeting with unflinching directness. Meghan Markle has been running an 18-month intelligence operation targeting my children. I need everyone in this room to understand that what we're dealing with isn't family drama or media strategy. Your job in the next 3 hours is to help me shut this down completely and ensure it can never restart. The head of security, a former military officer with over a decade of experience protecting senior royals, reviewed the evidence with professional detachment. The legal counsel immediately raised the question everyone was thinking: what were the legal foundations for action? Gathering information on public figures, including children, exists in a gray area, and any intervention, especially in California, where Meghan is based, would require careful justification. William had anticipated this. The flash drive shows evidence of attempted recruitment of household staff, which could constitute attempted bribery or corruption. It shows payments to individuals for information obtained through misrepresentation, potentially fraud. It shows surveillance by private investigators operating in Windsor without proper authorization. And most importantly, it shows strategic planning to contact my children directly when they reach certain ages, which could be argued as preparation for child exploitation or interference with parental rights. I want every possible legal theory identified and weaponized. Princess Anne interjected sharply, emphasizing strategy over legality. The legal questions matter, but the strategic question matters more. What is the goal here? Is it purely defensive, stopping Meghan's operation and preventing future targeting, or is it broader, using this evidence to neutralize the Sussex threat permanently? William considered for a moment before answering. The immediate goal is protecting my children and stopping active surveillance. The broader goal is ensuring Meghan understands that targeting my family has consequences she cannot survive financially, legally, or reputationally. I want her to be afraid to ever think about my children again, and I want Harry forced to choose between his wife's schemes and any remaining relationship with his family. Catherine raised a practical concern. What about the children? They need to know something is happening without being frightened or made to feel in danger. The private secretary addressed administrative and constitutional considerations. William would need to inform his father before any action, and the Prime Minister as well if law enforcement or intelligence cooperation were required. They also had to consider how this would affect broader Sussex matters, including any potential reconciliation. William's response was immediate and uncompromising. My father will be informed this afternoon, the Prime Minister this evening. As for reconciliation with Harry, that door just closed permanently. I'm not maintaining a family relationship with anyone who targets my children. William finished his sentence with finality, making it clear that he would not maintain a family relationship with anyone married to a woman who treated his children as intelligence targets. The following 2 hours were devoted to building a comprehensive action plan with multiple tracks running simultaneously. The legal team began preparing an array of filings, including cease and desist letters to Meghan and her California-based PR firm demanding the immediate termination of all information-gathering activities, restraining orders barring any form of contact with William's children, and a civil lawsuit seeking damages for invasion of privacy, attempted corruption of household staff, and emotional distress. At the same time, the security team initiated a full counterintelligence response. Every individual identified in the flash drive as a source would be interviewed by police or palace security, and any current household staff implicated would be dismissed immediately. The Intelligence Liaison Office coordinated with MI5 to assess whether the operation crossed into national security territory. Catherine assumed responsibility for the family aspect, preparing to speak with George, Charlotte, and Louis in age-appropriate ways to ensure they understood to report any unusual questions or contact from adults outside their trusted circles. Princess Anne volunteered to inform the king, recognizing that the conversation would be emotionally difficult and believing her bluntness would help convey the seriousness of the situation without the complications of family dynamics clouding judgment. William accepted her offer gratefully. The final element of the plan centered on Harry. William would send a formal letter through legal channels, ensuring a documented, unemotional delivery. The letter would outline what had been discovered, present supporting evidence of Meghan's activities, and confront Harry with a clear and unavoidable choice. By 1:45 p.m., the War Room had produced a fully formed strategy ready to launch within hours. Legal filings would be submitted before the close of business in California, security interviews in the UK would begin immediately, and formal notice to Meghan would be delivered by 5 p.m. London time, deliberately timed to reach her early in the California morning and limit any coordinated response. By 3:30 that afternoon, William's legal team finalized documents that would fundamentally alter the Sussex situation and place Meghan in legal jeopardy she had not anticipated. The approach was deliberately multi-pronged, designed to apply simultaneous pressure from multiple jurisdictions and force the immediate cessation of all operations while establishing precedent to prevent future targeting. The first filing, submitted to the California Superior Court at 8:40 a.m. Pacific Time, was a civil complaint alleging invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conspiracy. Its impact lay not only in its legal strength but in its public nature. Under California law, the complaint became a public record upon filing, accessible within hours to journalists and the public alike. William's legal team drafted it with the full expectation of scrutiny, ensuring each allegation was meticulously supported and reputationally devastating. The second filing, submitted to the UK High Court at 3:45 p.m. London time, sought a sweeping injunction barring Meghan, her agents, and anyone acting on her behalf from gathering information about William's children, contacting them directly, or using any previously collected material for any purpose, including media projects. The UK action also invoked data protection law, arguing that information obtained through improper means had to be restrained and addressed under statutory privacy protections. All filings were supported by extensive evidence from the flash drive, carefully authenticated by forensic digital analysts who examined the materials and prepared sworn declarations confirming the file's integrity and legitimacy. A third legal action proved even more aggressive and potentially more damaging. William's lawyers filed a formal complaint with the California State Bar against the attorneys who had advised Meghan's operation. At the same time, cease and desist letters were delivered by both courier and email to ensure immediate receipt to 17 individuals and entities identified as participants in the operation. These letters demanded the immediate cessation of all information-gathering activities, the destruction of any data already collected, and written confirmation of compliance within 72 hours, warning that failure to comply would result in individual legal action for participation in a conspiracy. The California PR firm received particularly intense scrutiny. In addition to being named in the civil complaint, the firm was served with a detailed 30-page cease and desist letter outlining every aspect of its documented work for Meghan. The effectiveness of the strategy became clear within 2 hours, when the firm's attorney requested an emergency conference call. During the call, the firm claimed it had provided only general public relations services and had been unaware of any targeted surveillance of William's children. Anticipating this response, William's legal team offered a tightly structured agreement. The firm would immediately terminate its contract with Meghan, return any advance payments, and provide full documentation of all communications and deliverables related to her account. In return, the firm would significantly limit its own legal exposure. The agreement gave Williams' team something invaluable: a cooperative witness with extensive documentation and strong incentive to provide evidence. Evening fell in London and morning advanced in California. The legal machinery William had set in motion began producing immediate results. Court filings were moving forward, cease and desist letters were landing in inboxes and on desks, and panic was spreading among those named. Criminal inquiries were opening, and somewhere in Montecito, Meghan was on the brink of discovering a side of the British monarchy she had never anticipated. Prince Harry found himself directly in the crossfire. At 11:20 a.m. California time, a process server delivered a formal legal letter to the Montecito property where he and Meghan had been living. Harry signed for the envelope, likely expecting routine legal correspondence tied to ongoing matters. Instead, he found a document that would force the most consequential decision of his life. Written in precise legal language designed to create an unambiguous record, the letter laid out in stark detail what Williams' team had uncovered: 18 months of systematic surveillance, strategic planning documents explicitly targeting George, Charlotte, and Louis, and an infrastructure designed for long-term intelligence gathering and eventual exploitation. It also outlined the legal actions William had launched across multiple jurisdictions just hours earlier. According to someone who spoke with Harry later that day, his initial reaction was disbelief. He struggled to comprehend how an operation costing hundreds of thousands of pounds could have unfolded without his awareness. But as he reviewed the attached exhibit selections from the flash drive containing Meghan's own communications and planning documents, disbelief gave way to recognition. Harry had seen Meghan carefully cultivate media relationships for strategic advantage. What he had never imagined was that the same mindset could be applied to his brother's children, his own nieces and nephews. The letter concluded by giving Harry 72 hours to respond, presenting him with clear, irrevocable choices that would define not only his future, but his place within his family forever. The letter laid out 3 stark options. The first required Harry to submit a written statement acknowledging that Meghan's conduct was unacceptable, affirming that he had no prior knowledge of her operations, and agreeing to cooperate fully with all investigations and legal proceedings. The second option asked him to provide evidence that he had known about Meghan's actions and had attempted to stop them or report them to the appropriate authorities, effectively positioning himself as a witness against his own wife. This path would require documentation and testimony that few believed existed. The third option was to refuse to respond or to defend Meghan's conduct, a choice that would be treated as confirmation that Harry either condoned or participated in the targeting of William's children. That response would trigger the permanent cessation of all family contact, legal action to recover benefits previously provided by the royal family, and potential criminal investigation should evidence of direct involvement emerge. The letter made clear that this was not an invitation to dialogue or mediation. It was a legal ultimatum with fixed timelines, and Harry's response or lack of one would be formally recorded and used in future proceedings. Analyzed coldly, Harry's position was almost impossible. Choosing the first option would mean effectively ending his marriage or creating an irreparable breach, as Meghan would almost certainly view such cooperation as betrayal and respond with divorce and aggressive litigation that could further complicate Harry's relationship with his own children. Choosing the third option would sever his ties with his British family permanently, ensuring that his children grew up without meaningful relationships with their cousins, grandfather, aunt, or uncle, and marking Harry as someone who had consciously chosen to support conduct involving the targeting of children. The second option existed in theory but was practically unattainable. Even if Harry possessed incriminating documentation, testifying against his wife would destroy the marriage without guaranteeing any restoration of family relationships. Notably, William's letter offered no promises of reconciliation or forgiveness, only a clear accounting of the consequences of non-compliance. The 72-hour deadline was intentionally unforgiving. Harry was given no space to negotiate, seek compromise, or coordinate a defensive strategy with Meghan's legal team. The pressure was designed to force an authentic decision rather than a calculated one. Meghan's reaction, when Harry showed her the letter and explained the legal actions William had launched, was immediate and defiant. She dismissed the flash drive as stolen property, claimed its contents were fabricated or manipulated, and framed William's legal offensive as a vindictive attack by someone who had never accepted her as family. She insisted that any information gathering had been defensive, intended to protect herself and Harry from palace manipulation and hostile media tactics. That narrative collapsed, however, against the weight of the evidence. The flash drive contained Meghan's own words, explicitly describing strategies for targeting William's children in ways that could not plausibly be reframed as protective. Harry's crisis extended beyond legal exposure or family estrangement. He was forced to confront the possibility that he had married someone capable of treating children, including his own nieces and nephews, as assets in a long-term strategic operation. He also had to decide whether loyalty to that marriage was worth the permanent loss of his family of origin and the legal consequences that could follow him for years. By the morning of December 6th, 48 hours into his 72-hour window, Harry reportedly contacted his own independent lawyer, separate from counsel representing him jointly with Meghan, a signal that he was at least contemplating the first option. Whether he would ultimately submit a response that met William's requirements remained uncertain. What was clear was that Harry's position had become untenable. He could no longer belong to both worlds or maintain ties to Windsor while remaining married to someone who had, in effect, declared operational war on the next generation of the monarchy. William's ultimatum forced a choice that could no longer be deferred. When the 72-hour clock expired, Harry would either have complied with the terms set before him or, through action or silence, accepted permanent estrangement from everyone except the wife whose actions had created this impossible reckoning. For those who remembered the brothers' closeness before marriages, distance, and institutional pressures tore them apart, the tragedy lay in how it ended not with reconciliation, but with legal ultimatums, documented betrayals, and irrevocable choices. Harry could choose family, or he could choose Meghan. The belief that he could somehow keep both died the moment William opened an anonymous envelope and discovered what was being planned for his children.